Today we are going to discuss our V-1 Premium Non-Shrink Grout. I have with me Dan Todd and Dustin Schinneberg. Both are very in tune with this product, have seen great results from it. They've seen it used properly and not so much. So Dan, do you want to give us a rundown on what this product is, kind of what it's used for, general specifications and so on?
Sure. So V-1 Premium Non-Shrink Grout is a high-performance cementitious grouting product. It's got a proprietary blend of sands, cements, additives, superplasticizers that help it flow into place in very tight situations. It also has an expansion agent to make sure that as the grout cures, it expands ever so slightly. We want to maintain positive contact with the side of any anchor bolt holes, as well as expanding out to maintain positive contact with surface plates, leveling wedges, and other structures. This is a product that not only meets but exceeds ASTM C1107. And ASTM C1107, that's the gold standard for cementitious grouts. This is a product that will develop up to 11,875 PSI, and that's with a water ratio of 3.67 quarts of water per bag. You can increase that up to 4.32 quarts per bag, and the compressive strength will go down a little bit as a result of the added water. But you do have a nice range where you can adjust based on your needs for your application.
Make it a little bit more flowable, a little bit less flowable.
Yeah.
Yep. Kind of tune it in a little bit.
Exactly right.
So I guess as far as watering and pre-wetting, things like that, Dustin, do you want to describe that process?
Sure. Well, as far as the water, Dan talked about the water content. One thing that's very important is that you have an accurate measuring container. In this particular one here, we've verified that accuracy. Some of the containers you get at a big box store may not be as accurate, so it's important to make sure that's the case. As far as the instructions, Dan, you got a bag over there.
I do. And on every bag, we've got complete instructions that help you get through an appropriate mixing and placement process. This information, Justin, as I understand it, is on the website.
It is on the website. So all of our PDFs in their most recent form are going to be on the website, www.unisorb.com. If you can't find it on there, give us a call. Let us know what you're looking for specifically, but this sheet, as well as many others, are on the site. If you're, let's say, too cold for the conditions of this grout, you're below 70 degrees, what would you do?
Well, I mentioned as far as tenting the area and heating it, but you're going to want to make sure that your water is at the correct temperature. If you're in a cold environment, you may want the water to be at 70, 80 degrees, maybe a little elevated. If you're in a hot environment, you want to make sure that water is cooler. If you got your hose sitting out in the sun and it's just baking, that's not at 70, 80 degrees. It's going to be higher than that. So you're going to want to make sure that you keep that water cool so you can maintain the grout at the 70, 80.
Let's talk a little bit about the overall mixing and placement process. So once we've got everything at the right temperature, we've got good site conditions, what's the first thing we've got to do to this job site, to the area where we're going to be placing the grout?
Well, we want to pre-soak the area, Dan. We want to make sure that the holes or the formwork where you're grouting in a plate or equipment, you want to make sure that area is pre-soaked with water, minimum 24 hours beforehand.
More than 24 hours is okay, isn't it?
Yes. More is good. Less is bad.
Less is
good.
Make sure
we have minimum 24.
Yep. One of the issues that we typically find people struggling with is green concrete, right? You've got that brand new foundation ready to bring in your brand new machine. You've got core drilled holes. You're pre-soaking the holes. You put all that water in the afternoon. You show back up the next morning. And that green concrete likes to suck water. And all of a sudden those holes are not topped off. So one of the things you got to make sure of is you got to have somebody on third shift checking those holes, keeping them topped off. complete 24-hour pre-soak.
Exactly.
Top down. Okay.
Top down.
And then, as you're getting ready to place the grout, you can start to remove that grout, have somebody with shop vac sucking the water out. But you may not want to do that all at once. You want to kind of time it out. So you can do some and have one person sucking the water out as another person is mixing and placing the grout. We want to talk about maybe actual mixing procedures.
Sure, absolutely. So, for mixing, it really is going to depend on the project, right? So if I'm setting a half a dozen anchors, or maybe I'm setting a whole bunch of anchors and leveling wedges, and so there's some discrete areas where we're placing the grout, you could probably do that project by mixing it a bag at a time, making sure that you've got good clean buckets to work with. Don't go out to the paint shed and grab any old dirty thing, right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure all of that mixing hardware is nice and clean when we get started. You also want to make sure that mixing hardware is kind of wetted down. Spray it down with a little bit of water. We want to make sure we're not pulling any water out of the mixture as we're mixing the grout. So if it's a smaller location that you're trying to fill, you can mix the grout in a bucket with a standard paddle mixer. We got an example of something like that?
Yep, that one right here. So here's an example of a mixing paddle that we use and sell. This is one that we found that works well.
Yes.
Those single bag applications.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely.
So what would you do? Let's say you have a application where you've got a large quantity of grout you want to mix at a time. You're not going to want to mix
Well,
too many buckets at once. Unless you got a bunch of guys mixing.
yeah, if your crew's large enough, go ahead and do the buckets. But it's really easier if you go out and get a mortar mixer. And the critical thing is here, mortar mixer, not cement mixer, right?
So what's the difference?
Okay, so with a cement mixer, and everybody's seen it, the barrel spins, it's got blades on the inside, it folds material on top of itself. That's not the mixing action that will give you the best mix on V1 premium non-shrink grout. The best mixing action is with a mortar mixer, and with a mortar mixer, the barrel stays stationary, and there are paddles that wipe the insides of that barrel, right? So you make sure that you got your mortar mixer, make sure that the paddles properly adjusted, providing minimal clearance with the outside of that barrel, the inside of that barrel. So you can use a mortar mixer to mix up multiple bags at one time and get a lot of material taken care of. Absolutely.
Cool. How would you clean that out?
Well, being a cementitious product, it's fairly simple to clean. Just get on that mortar mixer as soon as you're done with your project. Lots of water and just rinse it all out. You may need to get in there with a rag and wipe things down just to make sure that you get all the little pieces out. But this is something that cleans up very nicely after the fact.
Pretty simple.
Pretty simple and straightforward. So we're going to end up mixing with a very precise amount of water. Dustin showed us that measuring container earlier. We want to make sure that we're measuring the amount of water that goes into each batch, and we're being very certain and purposeful about that amount of water. You don't want to let somebody stand there with a hose and just eyeball it, right? You want to be purposeful about this. This is a high performance product. So we get it all mixed, we get it flowed into position, and once everything's flowed into position and it's cured up, what do we got to do after the fact, Dustin?
Well, we want to post wet. So you want to cover that grout with wet rags. And you want to, just as you would when you pre-soak, you want to maintain that during the curing process. So you're going to have people making sure those rags are wet and cover that grout.
And that's a 72-hour post-wet, all right? It's not 3 days where we say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's not 24 hours. It's 72 hours. So if we're done pouring at 1 o'clock on Monday, we're talking Tuesday, Wednesday. On Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock, we can start using the leveling devices to level our machine, using the anchor bolt nuts to tighten things down, but it's got to be a full 72-hour wet cure.
Now, what would be the consequence if you did not wait till 72 hours? What if I stopped it at 30 hours or 40 hours? What would happen?
Well, and that's just one part of the process, which we've detailed in our mixing and placement instructions. And anytime you step away from those mixing and placement instructions, you increase the potential that you could have cracks form in the grout. So by tightening those anchors a little too early, the grout may not be fully cured. You may induce a crack in the grout. By not getting the water mixing ratio right, you may end up having grout that ends up cracking on you. By not pre-soaking, you can end up pulling water out of that grout mixture that should be used to mix the grout, and instead you're basically wetting out your concrete. And you could end up with cracks in your grout. So following all the steps that we provide in our mixing and placement instructions are critical to having a successful project.
About as far as applications, cross-sectional thickness that we want to kind of stick to?
Oh, absolutely. You know, and one of the things about grout is there are some very hard and fast rules, and there are some other areas where there's the edge of the performance envelope. For V1, we would typically think about this as having a minimum 1-inch section. So if you've got a base plate and your top of concrete, we want to have a minimum section of 1 inch between those two structures. And then you can have a maximum of up to 2 to 3 inches. And this is where if you have a very large base plate and you want to try and go up towards that 3-inch end of the range, maybe give Unisorb a call and we'll talk to you about your project and make sure that you have the best mixing and placement process available. Same thing goes when you're thinking about setting anchor bolts, except for the difference is instead of looking at the thickness this way, we're looking at a radial clearance around that anchor bolt. So again, you know, if we're looking at an inch, 2 inches radial around that anchor bolt, that's going to be a really good distance that you can fill with V1 Premium Non-Shrink Grout and expect superior performance.
Outstanding. So I guess if you guys are ready, you want to get to mixing and pouring some of this?
Yeah,
All
let's
right.
get to it.
Let's get to
Let's
it.
do it.